A battle raged at the end of the first tournament. The forces of Earthrealm were facing their greatest challenge.
For as long as I can remember, Mortal Kombat has always been like the game for me. You know, like every 5 or so years whenever they announce a new MK game, I'm hyperfixated on everything about it. Theories, speculations on new characters, mechanics, etc. It didn't bother me that the main characters were just the same guy in a different colored t-shirt. They look cool, and even though there's a plethora of other fighting games that I could play, there's just something about Mortal Kombat that I can't find anywhere else. It stands out to me because it's not realistic like a sports game, but it's also not overtly cartoony like the bajillion anime fighting games out there. I always ask myself, what is my favorite video game? And truth be told, I don't think I'll ever be able to answer that question, but I can tell you that Mortal Kombat has always been my favorite video game franchise. But if I had to be honest, I don't care anymore. To put it bluntly, MK feels like it's become a shell of what it used to be. The excitement has been slowly dwindling away over the years. I didn't even pre-order this game until like the last minute because I had to convince myself that this game would be different, that this game would reinvigorate my love for the franchise after having such a bad taste in my mouth from MK11. But unfortunately, MK1 didn't do that for me. If anything, it only confirmed to me that this is what Mortal Kombat is now. A far cry from even MK9, the start of this new era. I think for a while now people have been noticing that something's been off, but no one can really put their finger on why. Because it's not just one thing. There's a whole bunch of issues that have been plaguing this game franchise for a long time now. Okay, so why is the first thing that I'm talking about in a Mortal Kombat video the music? Well, back then, there were tons of highly memorable songs that MK was known for. Deadly Alliance has the best character select music, in my opinion. Armageddon had the Clock Tower theme, which literally uses a clock as an instrument. Even MK9 had a lot of fun reimaginings of classic tracks. So I don't understand how MK could go from having one of the most recognizable theme songs of all time to music that sounds like it's from Kitchen Nightmares.
One salmon and one John Dory. Where's the John Dory?
I don't have the John Dory.
You don't have it. Hey, look, come here. You're not a cookery school teacher, are you?
You could honestly rearrange the tracks from each of the recent games, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. MKX and 11 to me have a lot of tracks that feel forgettable and just easy to tune out. In regards to MK1, there's only a few tracks that actually stand out to me. Cage Mansion, The Living Forest, The Tea House at Night. With everything else, I just listened for the cool part. And that's the problem. There's actually a lot of really interesting parts to each track that I feel just aren't explored enough. Take The Dead Forest, for example. There's this one synth piece in the track that really stands out to me. It's the part that goes... But it's the only thing I find memorable in this 5-minute long song. And that's because, like most of the music in MK1, for some reason it has to be accompanied by action cinematic music. You know what I mean? The kind of music you'd find in like a Taken movie or something. If you go to practice mode and listen to If you go to practice mode and listen to the Wuxi Academy or the Hourglass, you'll get a chance to actually listen to some really interesting pieces. Wuxi Academy has this awesome guitar, and the Hourglass does something really cool with the time theme and its drums. But when you actually play these stages, most of the track is just filled with action music, which to me just drowns out all of the cool stuff. You have to also understand that when you're playing an intense game like Mortal Kombat, it's very easy to just drown out everything that's going on in the background. That's why I think that Mortal Kombat music thrives when it's more bombastic and in your face. MK9 certainly has some cinematic action music, but for the most part, I think that the soundtrack is really solid and really well done. You take a stage like Shang Tsung's Garden, right? You listen to it, and it strictly uses instruments that would fit the theme of the stage. Like, you can't tell me this isn't tournament ancient martial arts music. There really needs to be more music like this that distinguishes each stage from one another. Take the subway in Armageddon, right? That track tells you everything you need to know about the stage. I love the record scratches, how the music sounds like it's coming from a vacant tunnel. It's grimy and dirty, and those guitar riffs are just great. How about the Netherrealm? The way the guitar shrieks like a bat out of hell, the heavy riffs. Then there's a part where the guitar turns Chinese, because it's a martial arts game. These tracks clearly let you know what stages you're playing in. There's no way you can get one track mixed with another. Here's a more recent example, the Armory from MK9. Man, this is probably my favorite track in the game. The instruments are industrial, yet they still take inspiration from the original track. It's fun, energetic, and it does a really good job at getting you pumped up to play the match, which honestly, I can't really say about the music now. Except for Cage Mansion, that is easily top 5 Mortal Kombat songs. The Streets and The Pit from MK9 have to be some of the funnest songs in the game. And again, The Pit, while clearly taking inspiration from the first game, completely rejuvenates the song in this new version. But if this was MK1, someone would shove in random violins and trombones for no reason. I'd say this applies to most of the tracks from MKX up until now. That's why I miss the rave music from the older games. Like, it was fun, and sure, it was as in style as this image, but people clearly loved it. And when you think of a Mortal Kombat soundtrack, you usually associate it with the techno music from the movie and the theme song. Now, don't get me wrong, the music isn't bad, and it's certainly better than what we got in 11 and X. You can tell there was care and creativity put into this music. It's just that it's not fitting for a Mortal Kombat game. I think Mortal Kombat's music should sound grungy and gritty, kind of dark, but also exciting. Look, here's the best way to sum up exactly how I feel about the music. When I show you this image or this image, I'm sure it's pretty easy to associate the song with the photo. But when I show you any of these images, what do you think? To me, Mortal Kombat was always able to separate itself from other fighting games by using its style. The ancient-looking architecture and downright hellish-looking environments fit well with this brutal and mystical world. At any moment, you could find yourself on a boat filled with hanging people, a prison with an industrial-sized crushing machine, or a stage that is literally deteriorating the longer you fight in it. And this is all in just one game. But lately, the stages in general just haven't felt as distinctive or memorable from one another as they should be. Like, generally most of the newer stages over time have started to all blend in together for me. I remember seeing an article that put the Hanging Gardens as the top stage in MK1, and I can't wrap my head around why. It's a good looking stage for sure, especially at night, but when I think of Mortal Kombat, I think about places like this, or this. I would have understood if they said the Pyramid or the Flesh Pits, but the Hanging Gardens? Hanging Gardens is such a cool name, by the way, but when I actually play the stage, I'm just reminded of the Bellagio Garden in Las Vegas. And I'm not saying that stages that aren't horribly brutal can't work. I'm going to mention this stage one last time. Cage Mansion to me is one of my favorite levels in the game. Same for the Tea House at night. But that's because they don't just feel like a highly detailed background image. They are very distinct and iconic looking stages in their own right. If I didn't know any better, I would think that these are like remakes of beloved stages from the 2D era. They are that aesthetically pleasing for me. And on top of that, I do believe that having good music can really take your stage a long way and bring it up a step. If the music in the majority of the stages stood out to me more, I honestly wouldn't have too many complaints about them. The original arenas to me feel more grander and more memorably designed. Like, I wanted to learn more about these places and why they even existed in the first place. The stages were more mysterious and creepy, industrial. It's the exact type of aesthetic I'd want for a game based around people fighting each other to death. Even though the newer stages over the years are a lot more detailed and realistic looking, they don't capture the style that I'm looking for. They feel condensed, full of randomly assorted assets and objects, kind of like when you see a test environment in one of those Unreal Engine renders. Another issue I have is how the sense of scale doesn't always translate like it used to in the older stages. Take a look at Shao Kahn's arena from MK11 compared to MK9. Here, I feel like I'm in the middle of a gladiatorial battle. I can see just how big the arena spans, the audience. They're not even real people, they're like projections. Regardless, I still get the sense of scale, how grand the situation is. But here, I feel like I'm just some guy in a corner. It's more realistic, it's more detailed, but it doesn't feel the same as this. Same goes for the Tomb of the Dragon Army. In reality, this is a giant tomb filled with thousands of dead soldiers waiting to be resurrected, but the player doesn't really get to see that. They see the first few lines of soldiers, a bunch of equipment lying on the ground, and that's about it. It's just not as interesting as placing you right in the middle and allowing you to see the full scale of your surroundings. At least for me, I'd much rather be in the environment itself than only looking at it from a distance. To be fair, in the 3D era, the stages were, well, in 3D, so it's easier to get a better grasp of your environment. The 2D stages, on the other hand, are forced to make one plane of existence look interesting, and that can be a much harder thing to do, especially since most of the time, fights will just end up in a corner. This is a problem, because the corner of a stage is significantly less interesting than the center of it. I mean, all of these designers are spending so much time on like a beautiful centerpiece, only for the characters to end up next to a staircase or a bunch of people freaking out. One way that I think they can make their stages interesting is by having throws change the perspective of the stage, or have the stage appear more dynamic, as if the characters are walking through an arena, even though they're just on a 2D plane. Kind of like what MK4 did, but obviously a more polished version of that. Of course, NetherRealms has made some fantastic stages throughout the years. You gotta give them credit where credit is due. Black Dragon Fight Club, The Pit, The Cove, MK11's remake of the Deadpool. These are just some of the amazing stages that they've created in the past. But MKX, in my opinion, is where I started to notice that things were off. I don't like the Sky Temple. It feels really similar to the Lin Kuei Temple, except my eyes hurt when I look at it. The Crossroads looks like a generic hell environment, especially when you compare it to the Netherrealm and MK9. The Jinsei Temple doesn't really seem like where I'd fight the final boss of a game. It just feels so small, even though it's clearly not. I feel like we should be outside or like on a skyscraper or something. It doesn't help that sometimes one stage can feel like another stage from within the same game. Like in MK11, the Tarkatan Desert reminds me so much of the Special Forces stage. Wait a minute. What the fuck is this?
I messed up the fucking image. It was on the other side of the car. Hold on. Hey, asshole. Open up.
What is it?
What is this?
What?
The image. It's wrong.
No, it's not.
It is. And it's the second time you messed up my video.
What are you talking about? What do you mean it's the second time?
When I was talking about the tea house, I said the tea house at night, not the tea house at day.
Well, okay, I'm sorry.
You know, I've been trying. I really have. But you've been giving me way too much shit, man. You got the images wrong twice. You make a mess everywhere you go. I almost slipped on a banana peel you left on the floor yesterday. Who leaves a banana peel on the ground like a fucking cartoon? And the toilet. Holy shit, the toilet. How hard is it for you to just put the toilet seat down in the middle of the night? Every time I go to take a dump, I almost fall in because I can't see shit and it's dark.
If you can't see anything, then why are you taking a dump?
That's not the point. That's not the point, asshole. I let you live here for free, man. I just asked you to respect a few things. Put the toilet seat up. Don't leave fruits on the ground like a fucking animal. That's all. But no. For some reason, that's too hard for you to do.
Well, it's not for free. I edit for
Well,
you.
you haven't been doing a pretty good job. Now have you, fucko? Again, how does this look like this? How does this look like this? They're very clearly different images. It's not that hard.
It's the same thing. It's literally
No,
the
it's not, you
same
idiot.
image.
No, it's not. Shut up. One of them is clearly more red.
It's the same thing!
Most designs are either overcomplicated, unfitting to the character, or cheaply under-designed. It used to be fun to see what unique outfits each character would get in the next installment, but ever since Mortal Kombat basically became Fortnite, that's not really the case anymore. Now, everyone only really gets like 2 suits, and they just change the colors each month based around the character seasons. So because of this season system, some items or suits that you got to see in the story mode, you know, the one you paid for, are more like an advertisement for a later season that may or may not actually exist. And if you see a cool costume in the store or in Invasions and you just don't get it on time, well, too bad, it's gone. I think this is straight up a terrible idea. The reason why people are willing to accept this in a game like Fortnite is because it's free. But this game isn't free. I paid $100 for it. I hate this season thing so much. All it does is completely remove any sense of individuality from the fighters. The colors don't even match the characters they're based on half the time. Scorpion's was predominantly red, Melina's was mustard yellow. Every interpretation of a season is overtly literal for no reason. Like, they couldn't just give everyone dark blue suits for Sub-Zero season. No. Instead, everyone has to look like they have a skin disease. All the blues are obnoxiously bright, and Sub-Zero just leaves snow on his costume like a fucking asshole. They don't even give you the classic suits anymore. That's just for the cameos. And even when there are classic suits, guess how you unlock them? Even the cosmetics are worse. I am hard pressed to find a mask that doesn't look ridiculous or stupid. I'm gonna make a quick detour here. Remember how MKX had a dynamic battle damage system so that you could apply to all of their cosmetics? Well, now they just throw red paint on everybody and call it a day. It's so boring. Like, come on. I know that the battle damage used to be a bit much back then, but it's Mortal Kombat. I expect them to look like they just survived a car accident. I do think there is a way to make their cosmetics more enjoyable, and that's by implementing a suit customizer. Not a character creator, a suit customizer. There's a difference. Plus, it would make sense since fighting characters with outfit swaps was the climax of the game. Like, the ending is literally Armageddon. I think that it would be a cool thing to introduce in the future, given that MK1 is supposed to be constantly updating in the next 5 years, and like every other fighter has one. Street Fighter 6 has one, Tekken has one. Oh, and Street Fighter 6, by the way, actually lets you play their original games when they show them to you. They don't just blue ball you with something you can't even buy anymore. You go online and modders are making suits that look better than the ones we're paying for. They're adding in wacky characters because why not? It's fun. It's a video game. If you have to capitalize on something, give us things like classic and story suits for free and monetize on packs of outfits and designs that we could customize ourselves and apply to every character. There should still be free outfits for us to unlock for customization, and this of course would include story and classic outfits, but I think providing people with something that they can actually control and tune to their liking would be a good middle ground. Or at the very least, let us change the colors of the seasonal costumes, while the only thing that changes per season is like the pattern of the outfit, kind of like how the Raiden season was. Although, I do think given that this is a next-gen game, and especially since there are so many variations of outfits, it would be nice to be able to display online fighters with their original designs. Sometimes, I just want to fight Rico, not whatever this is. If it's not fun, why put it in the game? That is a question that they did not ask themselves. It's pretty crazy that this entire concept was done better almost 20 years ago. They actually made multiple fully explorable worlds, they had dedicated arenas for their conquest, and it didn't feel like you were playing virtual Monopoly. There isn't even a point to having a giant map you can move around in, because no matter where you land, the fight locations are in the exact same place. 2 times in a row, NetherRealms has spent a majority of their time developing a tedious and convoluted mode that no one wants to play. No one cares about the stats of their amulet or what elements work better against a specific opponent. It's boring. It feels like I'm doing homework, not playing a fighting game.
Move along. This bridge is off limits.
Everything feels like padding. There are too many opponents to fight who don't even have worthwhile gear, and there are too many mesas to explore. It should be like 3 or 4 worlds tops with multiple gear per fighter as the reward. This is better than the crypt from the last game, sure, but it's still bad and poorly executed. The thing is though, if it weren't for all the monotonous crap, I could see this being interesting. Make the minigames completely optional, have there only be like 3 maps per invasion, and take out all of the unnecessary amulet stuff, and I can see this being a kind of interesting way to implement like a practice mode or to learn new characters. I remember how Mortal Kombat games made you feel like you were actually getting a bang for your buck. Like, you were assured when you bought MK9 that you had the game. Sure, there was DLC, but for the most part, you got the whole package. In fact, let's look at the previous titles to see what you would get. Deception had Conquest, which is basically story mode, except you can learn new characters you didn't play, unlock new characters, alternate suits, and even earn more coins for the crypt. And of course, it had chess combat and puzzle combat. Then Armageddon had another Conquest mode, a wacky card game, and a fully fleshed out character creator. You can make whoever you wanted, your own original character, an ideal version of an already existing one. The limit is your imagination and your time. Oh, and you had every Mortal Kombat fighter since the very first game as base roster, for free. Should they have done that? Probably not. But they did it anyways, and you know what? It was kind of fun. MK9 had a story mode that was directly about the main characters this time, not just a random guy, thank God. And something that I feel is really overlooked in MK is the fact that they had a tag mode, which is basically the best mode you can have in any fighting game. I learned characters I probably wouldn't have even tried if I was forced to only play as one character in ladder, so I'm so glad they introduced it. And playing with friends in tag was just awesome. MKX had the variation system, which increases so much replay value. Now, it didn't have tag, and I did not like the story that much. You do need to pay for DLC for a pretty big roster, and honestly, I have been disagreeing with the idea more and more over the years. But at the very least, you got what you paid for. Again, 3 variations per character, even for guest fighters, and then there's Triborg, who has a secret 4th variation. Like, what? Let's do more fun stuff like this if I'm gonna be paying for DLC. Like, make it worth my while. But since MK11, the ball has dropped. Technically, there was a lot of content you could have unlocked in 11. You even had the ability to customize your variation, which is a neat idea. So on paper, this all sounds pretty cool. The problem is that everything cool is completely overshadowed by how scummy the business end of the game was. If you wanted to unlock everything, even excluding DLC fighters, you had to fork over some cash and spend an ungodly amount of time working at finding just one skin that you liked out of millions of weird ones. In terms of fun extra content, there was nothing unless you count those dumb time towers, but you couldn't even do that unless you were online. MK11 was such a weird experience because all it did was make me want to play their older games, because everything felt so lackluster. In fact, MK11 is the reason why I completed Deception's Conquest mode in the first place. I was so hungry for more stuff that playing an almost 20-year-old game felt more fulfilling than this one did. So you think, after the reception of MK11, they would have changed everything. I mean, they admitted they messed up.
I want to be very, very clear about this, and this is maybe the most important part of this thing for me. This game was never designed to encourage in-game purchases.
No.
NetherRealm does not make games that way, and we never have made games that way.
And we won't.
And MK1 was advertised as a reboot. But no, it's like the last 5 years didn't happen. MK1 at release was like a practical joke on the people who pre-ordered the game. You had story mode, 1 season of invasions, and that's it. And to be honest, story mode doesn't even feel worth it anymore. Like, you play it one time and just watch the cutscenes again on YouTube later. There's no reason to replay it, especially when the story mode itself feels so rushed, clearly incomplete, and only meant to promote the expansion. I don't like the skins based off of Guy Fieri's t-shirts, so Invasions was useless. And while the cameo system is interesting and can be fun, just like MK11, it's completely overshadowed by how incomplete the game feels and its business practices. Everything nowadays has to relate to their monetization in some way or another. They can't just have something cool for the sake of it being cool. You need to buy fatalities now, like, really? Once again with the story mode outfits. This outfit wasn't even available till like a month ago, and this one still isn't even out yet. These are the main characters of your game. Imagine if in MK9, all of these outfits were either locked behind a paywall or unreleased. Cameos actually cost money. Now some of you might be thinking, well, DLC fighters cost money. What's the difference? The difference is that DLC fighters are actual playable characters. Cameos are borderline just a special move. All you do is press a button and that's it. That's the extent of the cameo. You are paying money to have an extra special move in the game. This is really, really bad because they're retracting these moves for like a month from people who didn't buy the combat pack. On top of that, some cameos are the meta. Most people basically out of necessity are going to buy these moves because without the option, you can be severely outmatched. And by the way, the choice of DLC fighters is a little odd. A majority of them are characters that are already in the game. I mean, I forgot that Shang Tsung was part of the combat pack because he's so crucial to the story. Plus, he was DLC last time. I'm honestly getting tired of the idea of DLC fighters because you're either getting characters who you probably don't even care about or characters that you probably don't even want to buy in the first place. Like Jade. Jade is probably going to be in the second combat pack. I like Jade. I think if you're going to put Katana in there, you should put Jade in there too. But I am not looking forward to buying a character or waiting out an entire month for Jade. At least Scarlet is unique and was basically an original character when she first came out. Even when Melina was DLC, it was like, why didn't you just put her in the game? The combat pack should be for weird, unused characters, like Hornbuckle. You cannot tell me that the people making these decisions don't know what they're doing. Like they're not preying on the things they know we like. Not only that, but even if you do or don't buy the combat pack, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't buy the combat pack, you're missing out on literal game-changing content and putting yourself at a disadvantage. And even if you do buy it, you run the risk of having the thing you paid for be severely altered or not even working. There's no goodwill towards the customer. The game wasn't even ready when it was released. When the game first came out, the second player couldn't even perform certain combos that the first player could. Some console players couldn't even play ranked for like the first few months, which is basically one of two game modes. Crossplay was barely added on as a feature. That might seem like a weird complaint, but Mortal Kombat is a fighting game. Online tournaments are what people typically do in the genre for fun. It's why every other fighter that wants to be taken seriously right now has crossplay at launch. I know there are some people who are going to say, well, they had to focus on the important stuff. Stop complaining. But this is the important stuff. At what point does the lack of content per release actually start to bother you? When does the act of spending $12 on a fatality that's only seasonally relevant 3 times out of the year start to sink in? I'm sorry, but if you think that this is still acceptable for a full-priced game, then you shouldn't be playing Mortal Kombat. You should be playing Mortal Kombat Special Forces, because you're not a very bright fellow. Mortal Kombat used to be such a cool game. It was basically the reason why we used the ESRB system in the first place. People legitimately thought, hey, is this going to turn my kid into a psychopath?
How do you feel about cutting his head off? What?
I don't know, probably. Maybe this doesn't look like real life to you now that we have game graphics that look like movies. But in 1992, this was basically a snuff film, but for kids. You used to turn on the game and the first thing you were presented with was... Now, I can't see Mortal Kombat as this crazy, revolutionary, iconic franchise anymore. It's just another AAA studio game with the same problems as the other ones. WB has like 3 games under their belt with almost the exact same issues, and we're all acting like it's not a problem. Like MK1 is just a minor misstep, as if the series hasn't been gracefully falling down a flight of stairs for the past few years. I don't understand the overall consensus of the game either. We just have to wait till the expansion comes out. Like, what does that even mean? A few extra stages and cutscenes to watch on YouTube later are not going to fix the fundamental problems with the game or the series. However, I'm not going to judge you on getting the expansion pack, because let's be real, you aren't getting the full game unless you have it. Hell, I'm going to get it. NetherRealms has figured out a way to put a stranglehold on the series, and that's by giving their customers only a small piece of the pie, selling it at full price, and hiding away the rest of it for later. So really, you're forced to buy the expansion, because without it, you don't have the whole game. Keep in mind that DLC or expansion content isn't just fun extra stuff that the developer couldn't fit in on time. It's meticulously planned and thought out. It's why they release things like MKXL or Ultimate Mortal Kombat 11 as their own games. Think about it. If you buy the expansion before the definitive editions, you're giving them around 40 extra bucks on top of the $70 to $100 you already gave them. A few years from now, there's going to be the definitive edition and the obsolete one. And guess which one most of us got? I think the idea of the expansion immediately saving Mortal Kombat is a little out there. Like, I already know we're going to get an endless stream of videos of people freaking out because animalities are brought back, or that stage fatalities are returning, after already returning for 2 games now. At the end of the day, there are still major core issues with this game, and even if those things are addressed in the expansion or in future updates, what then? What does that tell NetherRealms about their quality control? Well, don't worry that the game doesn't work, or that the game barely has enough content to justify the price tag. We just shove in all the cool stuff in the expansion and update the game a year later. That's fine. Look, I know it can be annoying when you're just trying to enjoy something, but people keep telling you that what you actually like is actually bad. Trust me, I love Little Caesars. But people's reaction to Mortal Kombat has not been because we all just want to get mad at something for no reason. Everyone being upset about the state of the game is a symptom of how Mortal Kombat functions as a product. I was originally going to compare Mortal Kombat to Call of Duty and say that Mortal Kombat is the Call of Duty of fighting games, but even Call of Duty has different game modes and gun customization, and their free live service content is basically a game on its own. Mortal Kombat, instead, is more like the FIFA or Madden of fighting games. Every Mortal Kombat entry seems to be a stress test about how much content they can withhold from their game while still making as much money as possible. And like those games, they're successful. Because when people do start to realize that something is wrong, and even if the company's CEO is thinking about putting ads in their game, half of the fans just tell you to shut up. Yeah, Mortal Kombat is fun, and I'm sure that FIFA and Madden are fun too. But do you want this? I think if you paid full price for something, but are being constantly bombarded by anti-consumer practices, you have a right to voice your concerns and how you feel about the product. I think it's really important to do that. It's how things get changed. Even if you are content with the direction that Mortal Kombat has gone in, it's gonna reach a breaking point. Mortal Kombat is like a frog in boiling water. Sure, every now and then it starts to get a little hot, but one day, before you realize it, it's just gonna up and die for seemingly no reason. Or worse, lose its identity. Oh, my frogs are done.